The interview room was cold, almost uncomfortably so. She sat straight in her chair, her fingers lightly tapping against the folder in her lap. Across the table, 3 pairs of eyes studied her, some curious, some dismissive. The hiring manager, a sharp-faced woman with perfectly styled hair, flipped through her resume with a barely concealed smirk. "So," the woman said, leaning back, "you've been out of work for 5 years?" She nodded. "Yes, I took time off to raise my children." One of the interviewers, a younger man with slicked-back hair, chuckled under his breath. The third interviewer, an older gentleman, remained silent, his expression unreadable. The sharp-faced woman continued, her tone dripping with skepticism. "And before that, you worked as a junior analyst at a small firm?" Another nod. "Yes, but I handled major client accounts and even streamlined their reporting system." The younger man exchanged a glance with the woman, as if sharing a private joke. "That's cute," he said, barely hiding his amusement. "But we're a top-tier firm. Our clients expect the best. No offense, but your experience seems a bit outdated." She felt her cheeks warm but kept her voice steady. "I understand, but I've kept up with industry changes. I've taken courses, even consulted on small projects during my break." The woman sighed, as if this was a waste of her time. "Look, we appreciate you coming in, but honestly, we need someone with more recent, high-profile experience. This role requires handling billion-dollar portfolios. It's not exactly entry-level." The dismissal was clear. She was about to respond when the door behind her creaked open. A deep, familiar voice filled the room. "Sorry to interrupt." All 3 interviewers snapped to attention, their expressions shifting instantly. The older gentleman actually stood up. "Sir. We didn't expect you." She turned slightly and saw him, her husband, standing there in his usual sharp suit, an unreadable smile on his face. The sharp-faced woman paled. "Why, you know her?" He walked forward, resting a hand on his wife's shoulder. "Know her? She's my wife." Silence. The younger man's mouth actually dropped open. The woman stammered, "We had no idea." Her husband cut her off, his tone calm but firm. "I heard the last part of your conversation. Interesting standards you have here." He glanced at the older man. "John, I thought we valued experience and adaptability in this company?" The older man, John, cleared his throat. "Of course, sir. There must have been a misunderstanding." Her husband looked at her, his eyes softening. "You didn't tell them?" She shrugged lightly. "I wanted to get the job on my own merit." The sharp-faced woman looked like she wanted to disappear. The younger man was now staring at the table, his earlier smugness gone. Her husband turned back to the interviewers. "Well, since you've already evaluated her outdated experience, I assume you won't mind if I take her to lunch instead?" Without waiting for a response, he offered her his arm. She stood, smoothing her skirt, and walked out with him, leaving the stunned room behind. As the door closed, she finally let out a small laugh. "That was mean." He grinned. "No, what was mean was them underestimating you." She shook her head. "I really did want to do this on my own." He squeezed her hand. "And you will. But sometimes, people need a little reminder not to judge too quickly." Behind them, inside the office, the interviewers were already scrambling to fix their mistake. The elevator doors slid shut, leaving the stunned silence of the interview room behind them. She let out a slow breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she'd walked into that office. Her husband glanced at her, his expression amused. "You're really not going to say anything?" She smirked. "What's there to say? You just crashed my interview like some corporate superhero." He chuckled, adjusting his cufflinks. "Someone had to save them from their own arrogance." She shook her head. "I had it under control." I know you did, he said, his tone softening. But I also know how much you wanted this. And after everything you've done, for me, for the kids, you deserve more than a room full of people acting like you're some amateur. She didn't respond, but the warmth in his words settled something inside her. Back in the office, chaos was unfolding. The sharp-faced woman, Linda, was pacing near the window, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone as she scrolled frantically. This is bad. This is really bad. The younger man, Daniel, slumped in his chair, running a hand through his hair. How were we supposed to know? She didn't even have his last name on her resume. John, the older interviewer, remained calm, but his jaw was tight. It doesn't matter. The fact is, we just insulted the CEO's wife in an interview. Do you two realize how this looks? Linda groaned. He's going to fire us. Daniel scoffed. Worse. He's going to make sure we never work in this industry again. John exhaled sharply. Enough. We need to fix this. Now. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the building's cafeteria, she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. You're quiet, her husband remarked. She shrugged. Just thinking. About? She met his eyes. Whether I even want to work at a place where people like that are in charge of hiring. He leaned back, studying her. Fair point. But you're not just doing this for the job, are you? A small smile tugged at her lips. No. I'm doing it to prove something, to myself more than anyone else. He nodded. Then let me make a call. She raised an eyebrow. What kind of call? The kind that gets you a real interview, with people who actually know what they're doing. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smirked. Speak of the devil. It was John. Her husband answered on speaker. John. To what do I owe the pleasure? John's voice was strained but professional. Sir, I wanted to personally apologize for what happened earlier. There was a clear miscommunication, and we'd like the opportunity to reassess your wife's application properly. She almost laughed. Reassess? After they'd all but laughed her out of the room? Her husband's expression turned cool. Interesting. Because from where I was standing, it didn't seem like a miscommunication. It seemed like disrespect. A pause. Then John sighed. You're right. And we're prepared to make it right. She exchanged a glance with her husband, then leaned forward. John, right? Tell me something, if my husband hadn't walked in, would you be calling right now? Silence. That was all the answer she needed. Her husband's jaw tightened. Yeah. That's what I thought. John quickly backpedaled. Wait, please, let's discuss this. We're arranging a new interview panel. Senior leadership. No biases. She hesitated, then shook her head. I'll think about it. Her husband ended the call, then smirked. Well. That was satisfying. She sipped her coffee, a slow smile spreading. Yeah. It was. But she knew this wasn't over. Because somewhere in that building, people were scrambling to cover their mistakes. And she hadn't even started yet. Rumors traveled fast in the corporate world. By the next morning, whispers about the CEO's wife and the disastrous interview had spread through every department. Some employees smirked at Linda and Daniel's humiliation, while others nervously wondered if they'd ever underestimated someone who could end their careers with a single word. She walked into the building the next day, head held high, ignoring the sideways glances. This time, she wasn't going to any interview room. She'd been summoned to the 32nd floor, the executive suite. The receptionist nearly spilled her coffee upon seeing her. Ma'am. Mr. Wilkinson is expecting you. Please, go right in. She smiled politely and entered the spacious office where her husband sat with two other senior executives. The atmosphere was tense. "Ah, there she is," her husband said, standing to greet her with a kiss on the cheek. "Everyone, you know my wife." "Wife, you know everyone." The executives shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a silver-haired man named Robert, cleared his throat. "We owe you an apology. The way you were treated was unacceptable." She took a seat, crossing her legs. "It's not me you should apologize to." Robert blinked. "I don't follow. How many other qualified candidates get dismissed because someone decides their experience is cute?" Her voice remained calm, but the edge was unmistakable. How many working mothers never get callbacks after taking time off to raise children? The room fell silent. Her husband hid a smile behind his coffee cup. A knock at the door interrupted them. A petite woman in her 40s entered hesitantly. "Sorry to interrupt, but," her eyes widened when she saw who was sitting there. "Oh. You." She frowned. "Do I know you?" The woman stepped forward eagerly. "We worked together at Klein & Partners 10 years ago. I was in accounting. You trained me on the Montgomery account right before you left." Recognition dawned. "Mira? Mira Patel?" Mira nodded excitedly. "I couldn't believe it when I heard you were back. And now you're—" She glanced nervously at the CEO. Her husband raised an eyebrow. "You two know each other?" Mira answered before she could. "Know her? She saved our department. The system she implemented cut processing time by 40%. They still use her templates." The executives exchanged glances. Robert's face turned an interesting shade of red. Her husband leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Is that so?" Mira continued, oblivious to the tension. "When she left for maternity leave, they promised her job back. Then they restructured and let her go. Biggest mistake they ever made." A slow smile spread across her face as she watched the executives squirm. The universe had just handed her the perfect revenge, and she hadn't even had to lift a finger. The tension in the executive suite could have been cut with a knife. Robert, the silver-haired executive, suddenly found the cityscape outside the window fascinating. Mira, sensing she'd stepped into something volatile, excused herself with a nervous smile. Her husband broke the silence first. "Well, this has been enlightening." She kept her expression neutral, but inside, satisfaction bloomed. Years of being dismissed, of hearing, "You're just a stay-at-home mom now," of people assuming her career skills had expired, and here was the universe handing her vindication on a silver platter. Robert finally turned back, clearing his throat. "Clearly there's been a misalignment in our hiring practices. We'd like to rectify that immediately." Her husband leaned back in his chair. "How?" "An executive position," Robert said quickly. "Vice President of Operational Strategy. Reporting directly to the board." She nearly laughed. From too outdated to VP in 24 hours? The hypocrisy was almost impressive. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message read, "They'll never respect you. Just ask your husband what really happened at Klein & Partners." Her fingers tightened around the phone. What the hell did that mean? Later that evening, over takeout in their kitchen, she finally showed him the message. His chopsticks froze mid-air. "Where did you get this?" "No idea. Anonymous." She studied his face closely. "But you know something." He set down his food with deliberate calm. "It's nothing. Probably some disgruntled employee trying to stir trouble. Try again." A muscle twitched in his jaw. Then he sighed. "Fine. When Klein restructured?" "That was me." She blinked. "What?" I bought them out 6 months after they let you go. Shut down their toxic little boys club and absorbed their worthwhile clients. His eyes burned with quiet fury. They never saw it coming. She sat back, stunned. All these years, she'd assumed her old firm had simply moved on. The realization that her husband had orchestrated their downfall, for her, sent a strange mix of warmth and unease through her chest. You never told me. You were exhausted with the twins. I didn't want to dredge up bad memories. He reached for her hand. And I knew you'd want to fight your own battles. The unspoken truth hung between them. This was exactly why she'd kept his last name off her resume. Her phone buzzed again. Same number. Ask him about the NDA. The blood drained from her husband's face. The kitchen suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. Her husband's grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly before he forced himself to relax. What NDA? She asked quietly. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the tile. We're not doing this. Someone's trying to manipulate you. She held up her phone, the glowing screen casting shadows across his tense face. Then explain why they think it'll work. A beat of silence. Outside, a car alarm wailed into the night. It was standard procedure, he finally said. When I acquired Klein, certain executives had to sign non-disclosures about their questionable business practices. His jaw worked. Nothing that concerns you. The careful phrasing made her stomach twist. There was more, she could see it in the way he wouldn't meet her eyes. But before she could press further, her phone lit up with a new email notification. The subject line made her blood run cold. Ask him about the missing $2 million. Across town, Linda and Daniel sat in a dimly lit bar, nursing drinks between frantic phone searches. Found it. Daniel hissed, turning his laptop screen toward Linda. Klein and Partners went under 6 years ago after a hostile takeover by, his breath caught. Holy shit. Our CEO's old investment firm. Linda's manicured finger scrolled through the archived news article. And look at the timing. Right after she left on maternity leave. Her eyes gleamed with desperate calculation. You think he tanked them as revenge? Daniel downed his whiskey. Does it matter? If we can prove there was something shady about that acquisition. We might just save our jobs, Linda finished. She pulled out her phone. I know someone who worked at Klein's legal department. Back home, she stared at the email's attachment, a scanned document with her husband's signature next to a settlement amount that made her dizzy. This says you paid off Klein's CFO, she whispered. Her husband snatched the phone, his calm facade cracking. This is exactly what they want. You digging into ancient history while what? She stood, knocking over her wine glass. Red liquid bled across the counter like an omen. What aren't you telling me? The phone rang. An unknown number again. She answered on speaker. A digitally altered voice hissed through, check your husband's safe. Box number 1728. Click. Her husband went pale. That's impossible. Only 3 people know that. She was already moving toward their home office. The biometric safe clicked open under his fingerprint. Box number 1728 contained a single USB drive. The video that loaded made her stomach revolt. Her old Klein boss, sweaty and panicked, stared into the camera. If you're seeing this, Wilkinson got to me. The missing funds were his idea, set up to look like embezzlement so I'd sell Klein cheap. He wanted them destroyed for firing his. Her husband slammed the laptop shut. That's enough. For the first time in their marriage, she took a step back from him. The man on that video wasn't the loving husband she knew. This was the ruthless businessman people whispered about in boardrooms. And he'd lied to her for years. The home office felt like a crime scene. The USB drive sat between them like a smoking gun, its contents rewriting their entire history. She finally found her voice. "All this time, you made me think I lost my job because of restructuring." Her husband ran a hand through his hair, his usual composure shattered. "I was protecting you." "From what? The truth?" Her laugh was hollow. "You orchestrated an entire corporate takedown over a grudge." "It wasn't just a grudge." The sudden rawness in his voice startled her. "They promised your job would be waiting. Then they replaced you with some CFO's nephew half as qualified. You were 8 months pregnant with twins when they—" He cut himself off, breathing hard. The memory hit her like a physical blow, the humiliating exit interview, the HR rep avoiding her eyes, the way her desk had been cleared out before she even left the building. Her hands trembled. "So you bankrupted them?" "I bought a failing company and dissolved it legally." His eyes burned with intensity. "That video? That's a scared man trying to save his own skin before prison." She wanted to believe him. But the cracks in their foundation kept spreading. "Who's sending these messages?" Before he could answer, her phone buzzed, a new email with one line. "Resign from the VP offer by noon tomorrow. Or the video goes public." At that same moment, Linda's informant from Klein's legal department slid a manila envelope across a coffee shop table. "Keep my name out of it," the woman muttered before scurrying away. Linda tore open the envelope. Her eyes widened as she scanned the documents. "Oh my God." Daniel leaned in. "What?" She showed him a photograph, a younger version of their CEO shaking hands with a known organized crime figure at a charity gala. The attached bank statements showed a $500,000 consulting fee paid to a shell company the week after Klein was acquired. Linda's hands shook. This isn't just about revenge anymore. If this gets out, the whole company collapses, Daniel finished. He looked sick. "We need to go to the board." Linda hesitated, staring at the photo. Something didn't add up. The date on the bank transfer was 3 days after the CEO's wife had been fired. Too coincidental. Back home, she watched her husband pace like a caged animal. "We'll call their bluff," he said. "I have security teams tracing the—" "No." The word came out quieter than she expected. "I'm declining the VP position." He froze. "What?" She met his gaze evenly. "Not because of their threats. Because I won't take a job I didn't earn." The truth settled into her bones. "And because we clearly have bigger problems." His phone rang, the board chairman. He answered on speaker. "Wilkinson, we need you downtown immediately." The chairman's voice was strained. "Someone just leaked documents suggesting mob ties to the Klein acquisition." Her husband's knuckles went white around the phone. "That's absurd." "Is it?" A pause. "Your wife's old boss is holding a press conference in 2 hours. He claims you framed him." The call ended. For the first time since she'd known him, her husband looked truly afraid. She picked up her purse. "Let's go." He blinked. "You're coming with me? Someone's trying to destroy us." She headed for the door, fury sharpening her voice. "And I want to look them in the eye when they fail." The press conference was already a circus when they arrived. News vans lined the street, reporters jostling for position outside Klein and Partners' old headquarters. Inside, her former boss, now a bloated, sweating version of his former self, was adjusting his tie behind a microphone-laden podium. Her husband gripped her elbow. "Stay close." They slipped in through a side entrance, unnoticed in the chaos. From the shadows near the stage, she scanned the crowd, and froze. Linda and Daniel sat in the third row, clutching files. But it was the figure beside them that made her blood run cold, Klein's former CFO, the same man from the USB video, whispering urgently to a reporter. Her husband followed her gaze. "This is a setup," he muttered. Before she could respond, her old boss tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, today I'll prove how." The doors burst open. All heads turned as Meera Patel marched down the center aisle, dragging a reluctant IT technician by the arm. "I have proof the documents are fake," Meera announced, her voice shaking but clear. The room erupted. 20 minutes later, in a chaotic back office, Meera showed them the evidence on a laptop. "Look at the metadata," she insisted, pointing to timestamps. "These bank statements were created last week. And this photo?" She zoomed in on the alleged mobster. "That's the CEO of a legit shipping company from Singapore." Her husband exhaled sharply. "They photoshopped his face onto someone else's body." Meera nodded. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to frame you." She studied Myra's determined face. "Why risk your career for this?" Meera met her gaze. "Because you were the only one at Klein who treated me like a human being." A beat. "And because I saw Daniel bribing our IT guy yesterday." The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. Across town, Linda paced outside Daniel's apartment, the incriminating files heavy in her bag. She'd slipped away during the chaos, her conscience screaming. The door swung open before she could knock. Daniel's smile was chilling. "Changed your mind about the board meeting?" Linda swallowed hard. "I know you altered those documents." His smirk faded. "Careful, Linda. You signed the NDA too." "What NDA?" "We never." The realization hit her like a truck. Daniel hadn't just uncovered secrets, he'd helped create them. And she'd walked right into his trap. The confrontation exploded at dawn in the company's empty executive suite. She arrived first, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows as the city blinked awake below. The USB drive weighed heavily in her pocket, along with the truth she'd uncovered overnight. Her husband entered, his usual crisp suit rumpled from a sleepless night. "You shouldn't be here." She turned, holding up the drive. "I know who's behind this." Before she could continue, the doors burst open. Daniel strode in, flanked by two board members, and Linda, whose ashen face told its own story. "Perfect timing," Daniel announced, flashing a shark-like smile. "We were just coming to discuss the CEO's resignation." One board member cleared his throat. "The allegations are lies," she interrupted, stepping forward. "But Daniel already knows that." Daniel's smirk faltered. She continued, voice steady. "Because he's the one who doctored the documents. He's been working with my former boss the whole time." Linda gasped. "That's impossible." "He helped me dig up dirt to save your job." She finished, pity in her eyes. "He played you, Linda. Just like he played everyone." Daniel scoffed. "Prove it." She inserted the USB into the conference room monitor. Security footage showed Daniel meeting with Klein's CFO in a parking garage, exchanging an envelope. The next clip showed him whispering with her former boss at a restaurant. The final nail? A recording of Daniel's voice: "Once we destroy Wilkinson's reputation, his shares will tank. My investors will buy them cheap, and I'll take his seat on the board." Silence. Her husband looked at Daniel with something almost like admiration. "You were after my position." Daniel's mask finally cracked. "You handed it to me. All I had to do was poke at your weak spot." His glare shifted to her. "A wife you'd do anything for." The board members recoiled. One reached for his phone. "Security." Linda stepped forward suddenly. "Wait." She pulled out her phone, hands shaking. "Daniel sent this to me last night." The screen showed a wire transfer receipt, $200,000 from an offshore account to Klein's CFO, timestamped the day before the press conference. Daniel lunged for the phone. Her husband intercepted him with a right hook that sent the younger man sprawling across the conference table. As security rushed in, she looked at her husband, really looked at him. The man who'd crossed lines for her. The man who'd lied. The man who'd just thrown a punch to defend her honor like some storybook knight. She sighed, fighting a smile. We need to talk. Epilogue. 1 month later, Daniel faced criminal charges. Linda got promoted to head of HR, after implementing new policies for working mothers. And her? She sat at her new desk in the VP's office, the one she'd earned after a proper interview, with Mira as her assistant. Her husband stopped by at lunch, placing 2 coffees on her desk. Still mad at me? She sipped hers, hiding a smile. Terrifyingly so. He kissed her forehead. Good. Outside the window, the city glittered, a kingdom they'd fought for, and won. Together.